Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Lee Richard McCormick. Lee Richard McCormick is the author of the Reconnection Guidebook. You can find out more about Lee and his work at spiritrecovery.com and integrativelifecenter.com. Welcome, Lee Richard McCormick.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello. Now, Lee, what exactly do you mean by heart reconnection?
The term came out of a conversation that I was having with my co-authors on the book, with Mary Faulkner, Joan Borsenko, Gary Seidler, Holly Cook, a group of us that were all in Santa Fe together. We have all been involved in the mental health, addictions, recovery, in the health and consciousness realm for a number of years. And out of that conversation, we all kept coming back to the point that what's really missing from our point of view in the mental health addictions recovery work, and then what's really missing in our culture these days, is a genuine connection and relationship to our heart and our spirit, as opposed to living from the scripts and the roles and the identities that we take on through the course of our life and then end up believing that that's who we are rather than that's what we're doing. So we all found a common thread, that there's a real opportunity to bring people's attention back to the truth of who they really are, as opposed to the roles and the definitions that we might live by.
Now, Lee Richard McCormick, how did this book come about?
It was, well, just as I said, we all had that conversation, and then I had the idea that if we were to team up and everyone contribute into sharing their experience, their life's experience, that we should be able to come up with a dynamic opportunity for people to engage in. And so we did this collaboratively, which is a lot of work. It's a lot more work having 4 or 5 writers than it is having one. But we have a fantastic editor, and she just did a really great job of weaving this together. So it's just a group of people who all share a love for the work that we do. We all share a love for life, for authenticity, for creativity. And we decided to create this book.
Now, Lee Richard McCormick, what is your personal background, your professional background in natural healing?
Well, I think the true foundation of my background is just the life I've lived. In general, I think all of us, the life that we live is so loaded with the legacies that we inherit, and stories and family identities and cultural identities and community identity, all of these aspects of a version of ourself. And we inherit such a powerful legacy of culture in this country, or in the world, just being human. I live my life like most of us do, trying to be good enough, trying to create a story that would give me credibility, and trying to do things that would give me value in the eyes of the world. And pretty much my whole life, there was something not congruent in the mix of the way our culture operates, the frame of values, and there was an incongruence to it all. So I ended up developing an addiction over the years to, behaviors and to substances. And I checked myself into a treatment center like 20 something years ago. That really opened up the opportunity for me to personally begin to question myself, my reality, what I believe. For me to look at the cause and effect and the thread through my life, of how did I end up where I'm at today? And like, what's the real story? That also opened up a series of experiences that gave me the awareness that I was actually living my life all from my head, more of a reasoning-based relationship to life than I was living a heart and soul-based relationship to life. And that led me to getting involved in the mental health addictions recovery business. I've created 4 treatment programs around the country over the last 20 years, all of which have been anchored in helping people bring their attention back to what's really true for them, rather than teaching them what we believe should be true for them. So rather than trying to program people as good recovering people, I believe that people need to be deprogrammed from all the stuff they've been taught to give their faith to, and come to terms with like what's really true for you from the inside out.
Right. Now, your book, The Heart Reconnection Guidebook, excuse me,
Bless you.
is of course about the heart. And so, those of us in natural healing, we all bring our expertise and our experience when we're working with people on their heart. So in my work as a medical intuitive healer, when I'm doing a reading on people, there's several things that I can read and check. The first is your heart open or closed? And it's my experience when people's heart is closed energetically, that they're either punishing themselves or protecting themselves, or both. And this, I believe, a closed heart, in my opinion, and my 25 years of experience in natural healing, is a primary cause of depression and also physical heart disease. What's your insight about when people have closed their heart down?
Well, that's a great question. In my life, 20 years ago, when I started my journey of reconnecting to myself, and by the way, I completely agree with you around when we close ourselves off or shut ourselves down in any capacity, and we block the energetic flow of life through us, it creates a lot of issues. So years ago, I was introduced to sweat lodges through a guy that we really got to be very close friends. He just passed away recently. But he was a Navajo medicine person and had grown up on the Navajo reservation traditionally. And what I became aware of over 20 years of ceremony is that we do get all blocked up energetically. The same way that a heart, the way our heart gets blocked up with stuff, right, that leads to heart attacks. We get blocked up, from my point of view, from the interaction of the experiences that we have and then the judgment that we cast into the experience. So every time a human has an experience in the world, there's an immediate automatic emotional response to that. And the mind then will judge that emotional response as good or bad or right or wrong. The moment we judge our experiences, that judgment acts like a catalyst, and it locks that energy in place. And that, from my point of view, baggage in our life. It's literally the energetic, and it only exists in an energetic realm as such, and it certainly does manifest in the physical form, in the more, in the denser aspects of our experience here physically, with the heart or the arteries or the manifestation of all this disease that we're living with today. So an open heart allows life to just pass through us. And we're like little kids. Children have big emotional experiences. They get really mad, and then 3 minutes later, they're over it. Or they're really happy, and 3 minutes later, they're back doing something else. So life just passes through them. Experience passes through them because they've not learned yet, and their mind has not yet taken over their experience of life, so that there's all this immediate inherent judgment taking place in every experience that they're having. They're just living. And that's one of the points of view, one of the offerings of the Heart Reconnection Guidebook, is to bring our awareness back to the truth of how we're living as a human being, and to take responsibility for that.
Right. So as I mentioned in my work, when I look at why first I check, is their heart open or closed? And then why? And is the person punishing themselves? And this goes back to the self-judgment that you're talking about, because we all make mistakes, and we're going to continue to make mistakes. Or are they protecting themselves?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, where you've been wounded spiritually, emotionally, the deep wounds that we all experience as humans. So it takes a lot of courage, and courage is a quality of the heart, to keep our heart open. Now, the second thing that I look at when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading on a heart is something that you talked about, which is integration. Is your heart connected to your mind? Is your mind, body, and heart actually connected? And in our society, I feel that we have a very intellectual, mental approach for a lot of life, as opposed to literally being all the way in our body, being grounded to the earth, being grounded to the here and now, with this fully heart open. So what is your experience, Lee? What helps you, in your opinion, what helps people to be more integrated, mind, body, spirit, heart?
Okay. God, you ask great questions. I love your point of view. That's where it really, for me, becomes a practice, as in the way the Buddhists practice in meditation. It becomes a practice of awareness. So the practice of awareness is simply, we learn to be aware of what we're giving our attention to. So am I giving my attention, and we all do this automatically when we first start out. We realize that almost any time the voices in your head are talking, we immediately give those voices our attention, right? And we all have voices in our head, right? We all have these thoughts. I call them the voices in our head. We all have thoughts, and they're almost continuous. And there are all these different characters in our mind. There's a judge character, and there's a happy character, and there are all these aspects of our mind. We are culturally not taught anything, and that's the problem. We are born into a culture that has a ready-made script running, and then we're taught that for us to be quote-unquote good people or happy people or successful people, we must be compliant with the culture. We need to be compliant with the prevailing beliefs or religions or value systems and all that stuff. Well, we're not taught anything about the art of being human, and this practice of awareness and learning to be a witness to the voices in our head, to hear them, but not necessarily go down the rabbit hole, not necessarily believe them, to develop the ability to be that witness. See, if I'm the voices in my head, then who's listening? Who's hearing? Okay. So I'm not my thoughts. I'm the one that's hearing them. And we actually, it's really funny. We actually have absolutely no idea what the next thought that comes into our mind is going to be. We don't know what it's going to be. And yet we will judge ourselves over that, or we'll go into a reaction over that. So in the heart reconnection experience, it's an opportunity to begin to develop a practice of awareness. And what am I doing? What am I giving my attention to? What am I responding or reacting to? And how can I learn to be 100% responsible for my reactions, for my responses, for what I'm giving my attention to? I'm 100% responsible. If I go into a reaction over something that's said and I give all my attention to that, and then I go into a full-blown emotional reaction or an intellectual reaction to that, I'm responsible for having gone there. And we're not taught that baseline of awareness. Basically, we're not taught anything, so we end up just more or less mimicking the nature of the people that raised us, or the community that we grew up in. So this practice of awareness is really key, from my point of view, to our waking up to the power that we hold. And it has to begin with ourselves individually, and it has to begin from the inside out.
Now, the third thing that I might look at in a medical intuitive reading for a person is where in their life experience have they experienced lack of forgiveness? Because again, we're talking about heart reconnection, because it's my experience, 25 years in natural healing, that lack of forgiveness shuts your heart down and blocks healing on every level. So what's your experience with forgiveness in natural healing?
Forgiveness is again, it's another aspect of that process of awareness. We first have to realize what we're doing that's automatic to us, and be willing to realize and own that pattern. And immediately that introduces us to an opportunity to practice forgiveness, because you have the opportunity to say, oh yeah, that is what I do. And the first reaction to that's going to be, oh my God, I'm wrong, or I'm bad, or I'm so stupid, or why do I do that? So the opportunity is to realize that this constant and automatic relationship we live with judgment, which is a pure aspect of the mind. The heart doesn't judge. The heart lives and experiences cause and effect, okay? The mind is this ruthless judging machine when it's allowed to run riot in our life. And again, that's a default mechanism for most of us. We've never realized that we actually had a choice in not automatically engaging in judging. So judgment's the opportunity to take our power back and to own our reactions, to own our responses, and then to begin to let go of the energy of all those judgments that have built up over our lifetime that we hold toward ourselves, and then we project into the world. So once we can break the pattern of judgment through simple awareness practice of, okay, you can feel judgment coming up. When you begin to practice this, you'll feel that energy coming up in you, like you're going to react to something and you're going to spew anger at something. Well, you feel that energy coming up. If you're practicing an awareness of breaking that pattern, there'll come a point where you feel the energy coming and you realize there's a space between that automatic reaction and choosing to not go there. Okay? And in that space is where we begin to reclaim our power from these patterns that we've been living. Forgiveness also gives us the power to begin to let go of holding on to the poison of resentments and judgments and anger, and just let that energy go, because all of that energy we're carrying around in our energetic field. It's like we're carrying all this baggage around, and the judgment is a link that keeps us attached to the objects that we're judging. So if something happened to me as a kid, and someone did something to me, and I'm still angry about it, and I'm holding a judgment of it, and I hate on that person, that's me consciously attaching myself to that experience and to the projection that I'm holding toward that individual that's all in the past. It doesn't mean that the experience was okay. I'm not saying that what the things that happened to us are right. What I'm saying is that, are you aware of the fact that we are the one, I am the one that's continuing to live in relationship to that experience, when through forgiveness, I can learn to release that and let it go.
And as you know, Lee, forgiveness is one of, because you work with a lot of addicts, it's one of the aspects of the 12-step process. So it's really crucial for recovery. And when I'm working with clients, I love the Ho'oponopono mantra, which is forgiveness. And I also feel that in addition to forgiving others, the most important person to forgive is actually yourself, because everything that you experience is a projection of your relationship with yourself. So as we learn to forgive ourselves over the mistakes that we've made, it becomes easier and easier to forgive others. Now, probably the fourth thing that I look at if I'm doing a medical intuitive reading on the heart is the 7 layers of the energy field around the heart. And I love how you described it, the baggage in the field. So sometimes we can be partially open or open to some degree, but not, fully experiencing total heart opening, total reconnection with our true selves. How do you feel that we can let go of some of the baggage that allows us to disconnect from our heart?
For me and for the work that I do, that's really where ceremony comes in. That's where I've spent a number of years doing what we call shamanic work. Whether in Mexico, I have a home in Teotihuacan, where the pyramids are outside of Mexico City. I've spent a lot of years with different traditional peoples, whether in the Andes or in the US or in Mexico. That's where the reality that what we're really working with here is all energy. It's all energy. And from the Western-minded point of view, we have all of these modalities, therapeutic modalities that have been created that largely engage people on a mind level. And of course, that brings up emotion, so whether you're doing CBT or DBT or a psychodrama group, whatever you're engaging in as a Western-based modality around mental health work or healing work, you get into the energetic aspect of it. You rearrange your relationship with whatever it is you're working on. But the Western approach doesn't take into consideration that once you engage in that energy, once you bring that energy up in your field, the last piece of that practice needs to be consciously and intentionally doing something to let that energy go. So that I tell people all the time, it's kind of like you go to a therapist, you go to treatment, you go to a self-help person, and you do a lot of work on yourself. But did you ever engage in, after every session do you do something to intentionally release that energy? If you don't, it's like rearranging the furniture in your house. It's the same old furniture in the same old house, but it feels better because you rearranged it into a new configuration.
I love the way you express that, and I totally agree, because as long as we keep telling ourselves the old story, you're going to keep experiencing disconnection from your heart and from your true self. So,
well, where's our first loyalty? See, our first loyalty, because when you practiced your whole life living according to your story and identifying by your story, then our first loyalty is to our story. Of course, it's the primary relationship in our life. It comes even before our relationship with the spouse or a significant other, right? My first loyalty is to my story. Well, in reconnecting with our heart and doing true healing work on ourselves and letting go of the judgment and taking responsibility for the fear and all of these the ways that we live and shifting the nature of how we live our life, our awareness opens up and we can become aware of the fact that, you know what, my name's Lee and I'm a human being. And 20 years ago, when I went to treatment, it was my name's Lee and I'm an addict, because that's what I was offered as the correct identity that was necessary for me to be in recovery. And then over a couple of years, I started to realize, you know, I'm addicted to a pattern of behavior, but that pattern of behavior is not what I am, it's what I've been doing. Okay? So really, I'm a human being who happened to have developed an addiction, which is just another energetic pattern, that I practiced that pattern of behavior and action and reaction for 20 years. And there came a point where that pattern of behavior actually had more of my power than I had available to stop it. I couldn't stop what I was doing because I was locked into this energetic pattern. Well, going to treatment broke that pattern a little bit. You know, doing all the things that are suggested, going to 12-step meetings. I happen to be somebody that the invitation to take responsibility for my life got bigger than simply fitting into the culture. And I realized that if I was going to find what I was looking for, I was going to have to take my entire reality apart and really look at what am I doing here and who am I? And that's what led to the development of the work that I do.
I really appreciate what you're saying, because that requires tremendous courage. Now, the fifth thing that I might look at in a medical intuitive reading is whether or not a person has a wounded spirit. And, you know, we've all experienced wounded spirit. If you're alive and you're listening to this, you probably had a wounded spirit. And a wounded spirit is when you have experienced a wound that's so deep. It goes definitely through your emotions and through your mind, but all the way to the level of your soul. And I feel that the most powerful healing that we can ever experience is on the spiritual level, and especially when we find ways to let go of these energetic patterns and these ways of being to heal the wounded spirit, then, you know, everything on all the other levels, the mental, the emotional, the energetic, and the physical can shift. What's your experience, Lee, of working with people who have wounded spirits? Because if they're addicts, they definitely have wounded spirits.
You know, what I believe is that what I've witnessed, some heartbreaks, I think some of it is so multi-generational that it's literally imprinted in our DNA. And, you know, what we know today around genetics is that genetics doesn't actually control anything. Our interaction with life, our behaviors, our choices controls our genetics, as in switching off and on different genetic traits that are already programmed into, you know, into our human being. It's really interesting. So the depth of the heartbreak, that's what I refer to it as. And that connection to the soul, that depth of healing, that depth of woundedness takes us so, it holds the ability or the opportunity, because I believe for everything's a duality in this world, and our opportunity is to come into an awareness of what the duality is. So the deepest, most heartbreaking soul wounds that you're talking about, to me, also are the opportunities that take us closest to a direct relationship to spirit, whatever you want to call spirit. One of my old teachers years ago said that whenever your heart truly breaks open, that you're in the presence of God, because once our heart breaks, what's on the other side of that is the spirit, right? You know, so as difficult as it is, as painful as it is, as powerful as it is, there is a dualistic side of that if rather than cast people in the roles of victim, which is very prevalent in our society, and that's really insidious. I don't see anything wrong with telling someone you've been the victim of this experience if that's what's necessary in order to get them to buy in, to engage in a healing process. And then at some point, I think there's a responsibility from the healer point of view to introduce the perspective that, you know what, we're not actually victims. We have been victims of experience, but that victimization doesn't define what we are unless we choose to take that role on.
You know,
and if we take that,
there's a wonderful quote, and Rumi said it first, and Leonard Cohen added on to it, which is, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do agree with you that, you know, some of the deepest wounds to our spirit, if you allow them to, you know, draw you deeper into a healing process, then it does allow you to experience profound transformation.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I agree with that. And see, it really requires it, doesn't it? Because you have to go to the root of that pain. You have to go to the root of that energetic. And so and this is something else, again, you know, I thought Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden and the quantum approach to genetics and to the energetics that we inherit in life from one generation to the next, that awareness gives us a perspective to realize that when we heal something that's multi-generational, it not only frees us, but it clears it from the collective consciousness. So if I inherited an energetic predisposition to something that was a soul wound that goes back to my great-great-grandparents, okay, and I'm the one that finds the opportunity to go into a healing place with that, and then I find a way to work through that and to release that energy and to let it go, it not only frees me, but it frees the generations to come, because it'll no longer be passed on in the collective consciousness. And I believe that it also frees the ones that came before us, you know, in a sense. Because, you know, our parents, our grandparents, we don't know what opportunities they did or didn't have to do healing work for themselves. And that's kind of the blessing curse. You know, it's like a buddy of mine uses that term a lot, blessing curse. Well, I could say that some of the biggest curses in my life turned out to be the greatest blessings, because it took that level of heartbreak and misery and suffering and wreckage to get me to pay attention. And I tell people a lot of times, your suffering could very well just be an invitation to life, to, would you like to pay attention now? You know, not all suffering is of that format. There's suffering that's just pure physical hell that, you know, is something else. But on a soul level, there's just a profoundly powerful, amazing depth that we're capable of going to, you know. And you reference courage. It really does take courage, because we have to have faith in the person or the people that we're in that process with. You know, we have to let go. We can't control our way into healing. Healing comes about because we find a way to actually let go and open up.
Yeah, and I love that. And I always tell my clients that the most profound healing you can ever do is to let go and let God. And, you know, when we let go of deciding how we want our healing process to look, then that's when you can open up to what is. Now let's talk about the qualities of the heart. When we do reconnect to our heart, then we can develop actual compassion and courage. And I was talking to somebody just on Saturday, somebody who'd broken his leg, and he was a very athletic person, and he actually broke his leg when he was out cycling, and a little dog on a retractable leash came right in front of him and clotheslined him. And so he was somebody who's used to having a real intelligent body. And I said, for you to get better, you're going to have to really practice compassion, because it's going to take time for you to heal. How do you feel, as we reconnect to our heart, that we can develop more compassion, both for ourselves and for others?
I think it happens naturally. I think because the healing process really requires that we begin to let go of judgment. We have to soften up as such. And once we soften up, my experience has been, we're really amazing beings. Human beings are really amazing. I mean, we can be a complete disaster and a train wreck and very destructive, and we can be absolutely amazing on the other end of that duality also. And I believe that compassion comes forward as we assume a deeper relationship with our heart and spirit, as opposed to living in relationship almost exclusively with our mind. And I think it's a natural occurrence. It's what I've experienced and witnessed. And again, I've had a relationship with ceremony for 20 years. And there's something inherently powerful in people coming together for a common intention. And that also raises us up. It's kind of like Jesus said, when two or more of you come together, it's that collective of energy that our whole frequency comes up, raises up together. I look at us humans from one point of view, like we're each a musical instrument, and we all operate at a particular frequency. And when we have a lot of woundedness and brokenheartedness, and we eat junk food, and we're drinking whiskey, and we're smoking crack, and we're doing all this stuff, taking pharmaceutical medications to address symptoms, with all that going on, if you consider your body, your mind, your spirit as an integrated unit, that's a music that's the equivalent of a musical instrument, well, then you get all out of tune. I mean, clearly you'd be all out of tune. So as we do the healing work on ourselves, we begin to realign ourselves with our heart, our spirit, with what actually feels good, on a heart and soul level, not on a light sensory level, but on a spirit level. As we do that, our whole being raises up.
Yes. And I think also another quality that develops as we open our hearts and reconnect to our heart is the quality of courage. So how can we develop courage to face the issues that are necessary for our deep healing?
That's kind of like the old recovery line, you fake it till you make it. I think courage is something that you just have to make yourself show up. And where does the resilience come from to do that? That's clearly of the spirit. And I think that once we do show up, again, more is revealed every time we show up for ourselves. We have a different experience. It becomes more compelling. We sense some relief. Courage and faith for me, are very intertwined there. And I'm talking about true faith, not faith in our belief system, but really faith in the unknown. So true faith to me is faith in the unknown. It's faith in the mystery, not faith in a belief system. And I think the courage you're speaking of is really closely aligned with the experiences that invite us to have faith in what's possible. And so we just show up.
Now, Lee Richard McCormick, you're the author of the Heart Reconnection Guidebook. And I know that as an author, whenever we write, we have an intention for the books that we put together. What is your intention for the Heart Reconnection Guidebook?
For people who are in a place of question in their life, questioning their reality, questioning the world around us, or people that are just interested, excuse me, in a broader point of view, or in self-discovery or self-inquiry, that this book be a contribution to that practice, that it support people in looking at life from different points of view than what might be their traditional perspective. It's real obvious to me in our culture and our world today that we could all benefit from relaxing a little bit on our points of view and realize that there's always a lot more going on here than any one of us can witness or know. And so anything that contributes to our ability to lighten up, literally, and to become more flexible and to ask more questions, and rather than demand answers, ask questions and then allow ourselves to sit with the question and allow more to be revealed on spirit's time, on life's time, rather than the mind demanding, I have a question and now I want you to give me the answer. But I have a question and I'm willing to sit and see what might be revealed for me as I go forward. And that's the baseline of the heart reconnection work, is rediscovering the truth of who we really are as unique individual human beings.
Now, Lee Richard McCormick, I know that a lot of your clients have addictions to both legal and illegal drugs. What is your experience about an observation about how do drugs, legal and illegal, cause us to disconnect from our heart?
There's one whole segment of the population of people that develop addictions that literally the addiction is a response to a pre-existing heartbreak or pain. We humans are intelligent beings. And if we're not comfortable in our own skin, when there's a dis-ease in our life on a daily basis that's based in trauma or heartbreak or some experience in our life that's really overwhelmed our sense of self, then it's only natural that we're going to seek out a way to medicate that dis-ease. And that's probably 75, 80% in my experience of the people that develop addictions, or people who are trying to find a way to medicate a life that's just not comfortable. So it's are they guilty of something? I don't think so.
I agree with what you're saying, Lee. And, I tell my clients, I say, you'll know when you're well, when you can sit there, get mad, cry your heart out, even have a panic attack and not need to eat, smoke, over-exercise, overwork, take a drug, drink something, when you can just simply live through it, knowing that as a soul that you're strong enough to handle whatever God gives you and that you will live through it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. It's just tough. There are a lot of people that end up being addicted too because they started getting high and it was just fun. They liked it. And then the story of life comes along, and you have challenges and stuff. And so sometimes I think it's innocent. I don't know. I've never met anybody that said, you know what, when I was 16, I decided I wanted to be a heroin addict. So I've never met anybody that made a conscious choice to become addicted. And again, an addiction it's an energetic. It's not a character defect. It's an energetic. And in order to break that energetic, there are a lot of ways to approach it. But from my point of view, the way to break that energetic is to bring awareness into the relationship that you're living with that behavior and with that substance, and then unravel it. just begin to unravel the nature of that relationship.
Lee Richard McCormick, the author of the Heart Reconnection Guidebook. Any final thoughts for our audience about how we can reconnect with our hearts?
Oh, man. You know what? Life can be so amazing. And we all have opportunities to step up. We all have opportunities to make a conscious choice to change the quality of our life, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with the world around us. And should you find yourself in that place, understand that the truth is you're worth it. We are worth it. You are worth it. And you've always been good enough. And the truth is we don't believe that. So we end up living the belief that we're not good enough. And we experience life that we're not good enough. And the truth is we are good enough. And the truth is we can create relationships in life that we love waking up to in the morning. And that's my hope, that if you have a little inspiration to go out and read a new book or check something out to enhance the quality of your life, maybe order a copy of the Heart Reconnection Guidebook. That's what we wrote it for.
You've been listening to Lee Richard McCormick, the author of the Heart Reconnection Guidebook. You can find out more about Lee and his work at spiritrecovery.com and integrativlifecenter.com. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. Visit my website, catherinecarrigan.com, and also unlimitedenergynow.com. And remember, when you reconnect to your heart, you're going to automatically, naturally experience deep levels of natural healing. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.